In today's video, I want to share with you a unique opportunity that we have regarding food security, and I also want to show you what I've been doing in my garden so far this year. Welcome to Plan B Orchard and Farm. Before we get started on today's video, I need you to do something for me. Please go in the comments and tell us a little bit about your gardening experience and where you are. And it doesn't matter whether you have no experience or tons of it. We're going to come back to it later on, and this is only going to work if everybody participates. So please pause the video right now and go leave a comment telling us about your gardening experience. Right now, things are happening around the world that have a lot of people feeling uncertain. Things that could have long-term economic impact. Jobs are at stake, and we really don't know how long it's going to take to recover. And in the United States, we haven't seen a time like this in about 80 years. I imagine that people around the world, especially in developed countries where we have had it pretty easy for a long time, are probably experiencing anxiety, and that's to be expected. That's a very valid feeling. But I think that we have an opportunity to be proactive and to build community, and we're going to talk about that more as this video goes along. You know, during the world wars and during the Depression, our governments actually encouraged us to grow our own food and to raise animals for eggs and food. And I think that as we are facing uncertain economic times, it's probably time to return to some of those things that we have lost as a nation. And I know that may seem overwhelming, it may seem impossible, but look at this garden. I believe in taking on the impossible. It's not too late for you to get started. So now I want to revisit your comments that you left telling us about your gardening experience. And if you would, please, I want you to leave a reply to your own comment, and I would like to ask you either to say, this is what I struggle with in the garden, I really have a question about XYZ, I don't even know where to get started, something like that. Or if you're more experienced and you've been doing this a while, I want you to say, you know, I'm really good at growing tomatoes, or I have specialized in back to Eden style, or I do container gardening. So kind of go back and reply to your own comment if you would right now. You can pause the video and tell us a little bit more about your struggle or your success as a gardener. If you stick with me to the end, I promise I'm going to tie all this together. Your garden experience, your questions, what's going on in my garden, it will all make sense. Just stick with me. Have a little bit of patience and a little bit of faith and hope. But now let's talk about what's been going on here in my garden this year. This is my 25 by 75 foot garden space. The west end was under plastic for a year, and the beds are mostly in shape and weed free. This is going to be where I start planting. The middle section was where I had my three sisters' garden, and it'll be the second area that I plant this year. The last third at the end of the garden was previously in the pasture. It's grass that I hope to kill off. So the first thing I did was to cover this section with bits of plastic and paper that we had on hand from previous projects. It was a windy day, so it was a bit of a challenge, but I got it done. We also extended the west end of the garden a few feet, and I really need to keep the pasture grass from encroaching into the garden beds. So while Carter and her roommate Maddie were here visiting from college, I enlisted help from the younger generation, and we went to work laying down cardboard and wood chips. The chickens really enjoy digging in the wood chips. So next up, I'm going to staple chicken wire all around the inside of the pallet fence to keep the chickens out of the garden. The first day I worked on the chicken wire, Chris was with me, and things moved along pretty quickly with him here to help out. I came back to finish it up one day while he was at work, and that took a lot longer doing the work by myself. This is a big garden, there's a lot to do, and I'm working on the garden before and after work and on weekends. And that's in addition to all the other farm chores that I have to do. Sometimes it gets overwhelming, and I just remind myself, I'm going to work on this garden the way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Sometimes the best way to combat overwhelm when there's just too much to do and you don't know where to start is to just do something. Just take a small step. And if you're feeling discouraged and anxious right now with everything that's going on in the world, I encourage you to just take the time to breathe. What's the next small step you can take towards food security for your family? Maybe it's going to be drawing out a design for a square foot garden in your backyard. Maybe it's going to be making a seed order or going to the store to buy plants. Whatever it is, I want you now to go down to the comments and just say, in reply to your other comments, I want you to add a reply that says, my next step is, and tell us, what is your next step in your garden? What is your next step in food security? If you're new to gardening, I would encourage you to start small. Don't start with a garden this size. Maybe do container gardening, maybe change a flower bed into a vegetable patch. Something small, pick a few vegetables that you know your family likes to eat and start with those. But do something. And I promise you that when you take action, this is going to do several things for you. First of all, when you're digging in the dirt, there's something therapeutic about having your hands and feet in soil. And it's actually scientific. There's something about the microbes and feeling good. It's science. Look it up. I promise it's true. Secondly, the act of taking action, for lack of a better word, the act of actually doing something, being proactive, will help you feel less victimized. And let's face it, in this thing that's going on in the world with this illness that's going around, we are all victims. None of this is our own fault. It's natural that we would feel that way, that this is something that has happened to us. But if you do something to take back control, that's going to empower you. And it's going to make you feel like the hero of your own story instead of a victim in the larger story that's going on. And third, I want you to realize that when you're planting vegetables, you're not just planting a seed. You're actually planting a promise, because this is going to take time. And so you're promising yourself that you're going to get through to the harvest. You're promising yourself that you are taking control of the food that your family eats. You're promising yourself and your family that you're going to be there for them and take care of them. So let's take a look at some ways I've been promising myself a future. After all the prep work, it was finally time to start planting. My soil is a little bit compacted, so I used a garden fork to loosen it. When I was planting onions, I used this board with lines on it to make it easy to space them correctly. After the onion bed, I moved to the next bed where I planted 2 kinds of beets and spinach. And this time I used my garden fork as a spacing tool. And I can tell you, at the end of this day, when I finally had something in the ground, I was so happy. The next thing I did was put cardboard around both beds to identify the walkways and to use as a weed mulch. And at some point, I'll probably put down wood chips over it. But I'm having a problem with my wood chips. You can see that there's little tiny green things growing up. I don't even know what that is. I know that for wood chips to really work as a mulch, I need a much deeper amount than what I have put down here. I've been trying to decide where I'm going to plant potatoes, because the area where I had planned on planting them is now under that big sheet of plastic, but I don't really want to take up the space in a raised bed for them. And then I was thinking about doing them above ground with straw as a mulch. I planted the red potatoes here on the cardboard at the west end of the garden, and I planted russet potatoes on the south side. I added rabbit manure straight from the rabbitry because it's either the only or one of the very few that can be added straight to the garden without needing to compost it. After that, I covered them with straw, and this is a much easier way to grow potatoes because, one, you're not having to dig a trench initially, which is backbreaking work, and then in harvest you don't have to dig them out. They're basically, you just uncover them from the straw. And I know that the straw might compact down and that the potatoes are going to grow up, so I'll just keep adding on more straw as needed. So Mama Duck thinks she's going to nest right there in that corner under those 2 straw bales, and I can't let that happen for a couple reasons. Number 1, it's not really predator safe. Number 2, I'm going to need those straw bales here in the garden. And number 3, I don't want her walking around mashing down my seedlings or eating them up either. If you've never gardened before, let's get you started. If you have experience as a gardener, let's take it to the next level. Maybe I can't help you by sharing my vegetables directly with you, but we still can help each other. So this brings us back to all those comments that we left earlier. And what I would really like you to do is now, if you are an experienced gardener, I'd like you to read through the comments and find a newbie whose question you can answer. And if you're a novice gardener, I want you to read through the comments and find someone with more expertise in an area that you want to learn about. And I want you to reply to each other and help each other out. I'm going to keep working on my garden as I have the opportunity, and I'm going to keep sharing my story with you. And I really hope that you will share your story with me. And I thank you for entrusting me with your story and with your time. Now I'm going to go and read all those comments, and I will see you on the next video.